Is Kelly Lynn that Instagram model?
We are here today with Mr. Paul Peterson. He is a firefighter. He's not just a firefighter. He's an aerial firefighter, doing it from the air with what is going on in California right now. That's why we're having him join us today. Mr. Peterson, we are happy to have you. Thank you, and welcome to Who Is Kelly Lynn?
Well, thanks. Yeah, it's good to be here, and yeah, I'd love to chat. There's the aerial firefighting part is a key part in all fire suppression, and although I'm a pilot, I don't fly the planes, but I'm the executive director for United Ariel Firefighters Association that represents so many different member companies that are out there.
Well, I was doing just some quick research on your organization in the United Ariel Firefighters Association. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. UEFA.
A little bit of a mouthful for me.
Yeah, it's UEFA. Yeah, UEFA, not UAFA. It's Nevada, not Nevada.
Well, it seemed like it started back in 2022 to address some problems. Was it aimed at the problems in California specifically, or is this a nationwide deal?
Over the last 20-25 years, the whole wildland firefighting world has seen fires that you haven't seen before, and you see it on the news. In California, the last 2 years they've seen the largest 10 fires that they've ever seen on history. And so, a couple of our members, as with anything, the best ideas start at a bar. And they started talking between some large air tanker companies, some helicopter companies, some aerial tactical companies, and they all started talking about, man, if this was just to change, or this was to change, or maybe we could get this. And so they said, well, maybe we should do something about that. And so really it was an opportunity to get engaged with both federal and state government and Congress and start to make some positive changes in the aerial firefighting industry.
Well, you definitely see the need for it right now. There's no doubt. And I will say, while you say all good ideas start from a bar, I promise you I've walked out of a bar with some very not so great ideas a time or two. But that's neither here nor there, and that's many moons ago.
Right. Not all ideas are created equal.
Well, I'll say had their hands full. I promise you, I'll act like I know no details about what's going on in California right now. If you could just fill us in on it, it's all over the news, and there's all kinds of speculation, arson, then just the fire, the Santa Ana winds coming up, just making it spread. What can you tell us about it? That I'm the average guy just seeing flames on TV. What information do I not know? What do I need to know? What is the real deal happening out there in California?
Wildland fire and firefighting just seems like a very simple concept. You put the wet stuff on the red stuff. Red truck shows up, helicopter shows up and puts out the fire. And if it was only that simple, there is a very complex back end of it to, just in the aerial firefighting part, to ensure that there's contracts that are available, make sure that there are aircrafts that are there to respond, make sure that there are mechanics to support those aircraft. And then once you get there, you've got to be able to fly, work with the ground crews, ensure that you're in a safe situation and you're supporting those firefighters on the ground. But the California fires it's pretty amazing, and amazing not in a good way, that you get 60, 70, 80 mile an hour winds from the Santa Anas, and that generally happens when you get high pressure. It sets up over Nevada, the Great Basin. Just that outflow through Southern California creates those winds, and happens, if not every year, it happens quite a bit. And when you get fire spread that starts in the chaparral in the LA hills, and then it starts getting into houses, it goes house to house to house to house to house, and it's there's not a lot that you can do until that wind, really dies down. And so the important part is on the front end is being able to be prepared and have resources available. Being able to remove vegetation either outside of the on public property, and your house, making sure that your house is safe. I live here in Reno, Nevada, and so I'm looking out and there's trees that are up on the hills right now. Just right over the hills, Lake Tahoe, and so all of those trees are scenic. But once that happens, and that scenic tree is right next to your house, that's just an ignition point to cause more fires. And so it's really a three-legged stool. Is you have to have stuff to fight fire. So you got to have fire trucks, you got to have crews, you got to have the aircraft to support those, and you have to do your hazardous fuels reductions, and then you also have to prepare your house. Have your defensible space 30 to 50 feet around your house.
Wow, a lot going into that. A lot of folks around the country, they don't think about it as much. We don't have quite the conditions. I mean, we have wildfires and whatnot, but it seems like a constant out there in California. I know there's a lot of people, and it's always comes with the politics that they're griping about the mismanagement of the forest. And what can you speak to on that?
So in that specific to the LA fires, there's not a lot of forest that's out there. It is where the fire started was in Chaparral, and those really there's no monetary value to those. You can't go cut chaparral and sell that for firewood or anything else. And so, you couldn't really do a lot of logging or fuels reduction in there. You can do fuels reduction adjacent to homes, pretty easy, but it's not necessarily a mismanagement of forest issue. You'd have to go in and do so much different fuel reduction in order to change that fire behavior. But once you get into the areas like Yosemite and Northern California and more timbered fuel types, is that vegetation has been allowed to build up over the last 100 years, and there's been suppression of fires for 100 years, but there hasn't been management of forest for the last 100 plus years. And so, especially with the decline of logging, and grazing has been reduced on rangelands, you get a buildup of fuels, and fire is the great equalizer that takes it all out. And so if you are able to reduce those fuels in a responsible manner, whether through grazing, logging, prescribed fire, it changes that fire behavior of those fires.
That's a little bit of history on that. I'm kind of interested in you. You're doing this, you're doing crazy stuff on the guys. You are a pilot and you started this organization. I'm guessing you have done this yourself, putting out the fires while you're just running it now. You have a history of doing this?
Yeah, and so I've been doing this for almost 2 years or so, about 19 months or so. And prior to that, I fought fire on the ground for 30 years for the Bureau of Land Management, and did everything from entry-level firefighter to fire engine captain, incident commander, and then got into fire management and ran the entire fire program for in the state of Nevada. And so I've looked at it in all different levels, and even though my day job might be a fire manager that does a lot of coordination, you still get to get out and be on the fires and go out and fight fire every once in a while also. So it's I dealt with a lot of the aircraft from the bottom side as an incident commander, and now I deal with them from the top side, working with the companies and advocating for those companies.
Where are you from?
So I'm from Nevada, from northern Nevada, Elko, and worked all across Nevada. I live in Reno now, and in northern Nevada, it's in the Great Basin, so you have sagebrush fuel types. There's not a lot of trees, which allows you to have awesome views. You're not obstructed by the trees. That's when I go up into northeast Minnesota or go back to DC. There's too many trees; you can't see everything. And that's I like my mountains. I like wide open views, but growing up in northern Nevada and hunting and recreating, you get to see some beautiful areas. And then I just ended up, my dad fought fire for the Bureau of Land Management like in the '60s. He said you should go look into it, and so that's what I ended up doing, and fought fire all the way through college. And lo and behold, 30 years later, it just ended up as a career. But it was an awesome job. It's really hard. It's really challenging, but it is a very rewarding career. I traveled all across the Western United States, went to Australia, went to Alaska. The areas you see is beautiful. Sometimes it's black, but the rewards and the leadership challenges and leadership lessons that you learn, it sets you up for your life, the rest of your life.
Well, it's definitely a respectable profession. I have tons and tons of firefighter and police officer buddies, and they all give each other a good ribbon. It's crazy, they're protecting, serving, and saving lives and whatnot, and both of them do that. And one of them gets a little bit worse reputation. There's not a bad feelings too often against firefighters. They're usually just championed and cheered.
Right.
As far as I,
Yeah.
a little bit better.
Everybody loves to see a fire truck showing up. Nobody loves to see a police car showing up.
Oh no, I mean, I guess that's just the nature of it. Not so much adversity coming from firefighters. So everybody's like, "Yes, thank you for your service." But it's funny to watch those guys when they go out. I've got buddies that are both actually because they were fire marshals, so they were commissioned police officers and firefighters as well. They did both the academies and at the same time working on fires, and so they got double beat up. They got it from both sides. The police officer gave them crap for being a firefighter, and the firefighter gave them crap for being a police officer.
Right. You can't figure out what you want to be. Yeah. And, I think overall, whether it's police, whether it's, structure fire, whether it's wildland fire, I think everybody has a dedication in a sense for public service. And, when you're doing the job, it's something bigger than you. And it's the ability to give back to your community. And, whether it's police or fire, nobody loves the recognition. You see the signs in the parade, thank you, police, thank you, firefighters. Most firefighters just hate that. They just totally hate that. Oh, we want to give you a big pizza party or, a big recognition. And you're not going to get anybody to hardly go to that. Everybody just kind of shies away and you just want to do your job.
Well, they're good folks in either one of them. There can be bad folks in any business, but overall, the folks I know that do these jobs, they're doing it for the service. They're doing it for the service to the people in the community. They're rewarded by that. It's not always the pay. It is actually that service. So I know that as being a military guy and whatnot, I know I enjoy that service. I continue that service in different ways, nonprofits and whatnot, trying to serve people. So there's some of that built into me, and it's always nice to talk to other folks that have that built into them, because a lot of folks have that, but some people, they just don't.
Right.
So when you see people just
and that's fine
selflessly serving people, it's always appreciated and admired.
Yeah, it's good, and it's my previous career was so much fun. Hiking through the mountains of Idaho and figuring out plans, and when you're out there, either with a crew or on a fire engine, or you're running one of the divisions or operations, it's kind of up to you to figure out what you're going to do. There might be some plans, that are out there, the strategic goals, but overall, it's kind of you on the ground that has to figure that out. And when you're driving an engine and the fire blows over the fire line, you go, well, we got to go back and figure this out, and go back 100 feet and pick up where it slopped over, and you got to keep fighting fire, even continuing down the fire line. So it's the rapidly changing environment. You got to be on your toes, and you got to be really willing to change at a moment's notice.
Luckily, the closest I ever got to what you do and what you've done is in Afghanistan. We had to have firefighters and a fire marshal. Well, that somehow landed in my lap. That I was fire marshal. I was in charge of the base, so fire marshal. So we had to do DoD certification and actually go do some training. It wasn't much, just enough to get a piece of paper, say, hey, check this box. But I do have my fire marshal. I think it's fire marshal, trains DoD certified firefighter, which I don't know how that was possible because it wasn't the most training. It was a little bit. We put out some fires, we worked a hose, that kind of stuff. Knew where it was in case something came on base and there was a fire. But I guess in some weird way through the military, I'm a certified DoD firefighter, whatever the certificate is. So I have some connection to you. I won't say that it's anything like what you've done, but hey,
it's the introduction of fire. You remove one side of the fire triangle, it's going to go out.
Yeah. Well, when did you start this? You said you're doing it through college. Well, how old were you when you started? When did you fight your first fire?
So my first fire was just north of Elko in June of 1992, and it started as a structure fire, and then ended up getting into the wildlands, and ended up burning like 5-10 acres or so. But from there, I showed up and didn't know anything about fire. You go through your basic fire training, and you go through a week long of fire training, and show up and pick which side of the fire you're gonna be on. Incident commander is gonna assign you the right side or left side, east side, west side. You grab the hose and you start walking along and squirting water and putting out the fire. And from there, I realized, man, this is pretty cool. This is really fun. And it gets hot and smoky, and smoke's blowing back, and you got snot running out your nose. And it's there's a saying. I'm sure, just like in the military or in whatever else, it's embrace the suck. And so sometimes there is some really, really sucky parts. You've got hours of that you're eating smoke, or you're hiking up to the top of this hill, and it just totally sucks. And so it's embrace the suck.
Believe me, that is a very common phrase where I come from, and I've done it more than my fair share. I promise you, I've done it a lot of that. The different trainings that I've gone through in the military, there was a whole lot of that. There was a whole lot of that was the goal. Let's make this as sucky as possible to see how many people will quit and go home.
Yeah,
I was dumb enough to hang out, and okay, still, I embraced the suck, which is beneficial in the end. But I doubled down on it and did it more than my fair share, is all I'll say. And my body's probably paying for it now, as I'm getting older. But who cares? It was all worth it. I'll say that all day long.
And then I just ended up, as I did that through college, went to college, and then would come back in the summertime and fight fire. And I think in 1997, 1998 or so, 1998, I got a career position, and then just ended up fighting fire. I was an engine captain at the time, and ran a wildland fire engine, and just ended up doing that for 3, 4, 5, 6 years or so. Ended up as a battalion chief after that, and so I was supervising a fire station and being incident commander out on fires. And then you get into the leadership part, where you're training and developing and trying to find your own leadership and figuring out what works and what doesn't, and how to motivate people. Is it with a stick? Is it not with a stick? And that provides huge life lessons that are out there.
Believe me, as an officer in the military, at one point when I was in Afghanistan, I was responsible for every single individual on the base, their safety and health and welfare. But then directly reporting to me I had contractors at almost 500, local nationals about 80, and then luckily I only had about 7 that were direct soldiers underneath me. But we were in charge of everything, and to get people to do things sometimes. Leadership. I was the senior instructor for the officer candidate school here for the Oklahoma National Guard. So leadership and getting people to embrace the suck and get through stuff. I know quite a bit about it. I've done that and did that all over the nation with National Guard units, basically from all over the nation. And it improves every aspect of your life when you have leadership opportunities like that and you're able to develop others. It is an invaluable experience that I'm just grateful for that I had those opportunities, because it affects, like I said, every part of my life outside of that military stuff, that I had that training and was able to teach people that training. It's just instilled in me. So it doesn't just quit with the firefighting. I'm sure some of that leadership extends beyond there. And I know a lot of firefighters that are businessmen also, with it's just at the firefighter work. Most every firefighter I know has another side hustle or whatnot where they're making some extra bucks. So anytime you can get that leadership, it will flow through other aspects of your life. And
Totally. And I think that, overall, when you look at either business or you look at government, when people talk about leadership, it's painted as this lofty area and this lofty goal, and people say, "Well, I don't want to be a leader. Or I don't want to do that." And well, even that's leadership. When you say that you don't want to do something, that's leadership. It's lack of leadership, but it's still leadership. And leadership can take so many different perspectives and attributes that are out there. Leadership is how do you treat your coworkers? And as a peer to peer, how do you treat your coworkers and how do you support your coworkers? That's leadership. It's not this big lofty deal that comes with a crown. Once you get into more of a situational supervision role, the leadership kind of comes with it also, whether you like it or not. And when I was an engine captain and training 2, 3, 4 firefighters that worked for me, it is you're trying to impart your knowledge, but also they've got to figure out what works for them also, and helping them work through challenges while you might not know every answer that's out there either. And I think the biggest thing, there's a lot of things with the leadership part of it, but how do you develop a vision? How do you communicate that vision, and how do you get people on board? And that's how you get people to follow you, because if you don't have people following you, you're not really leading. You're just walking in the forest by yourself.
yes, absolutely. You got to build a team, and you have to instill confidence in them to so they'll follow you. I promise you, if people trust you and have confidence in you, they will do about it, anything. If they believe in the organization and the mission, they will find gumption, suck it from somewhere else, and get the job done. That is what effective leadership does. It develops people, and it develops their leadership to accomplish missions. And if you can give them the support and the help and they have your trust, it is amazing what another human will do for a leader when they believe in them. I mean, good or bad. Good or bad. You can see that. I mean, a weird reference would be the Nazi soldiers, where that's a terrible way to look at it, but that was still leadership from a terrible person. But look what he was able to get other folks to do. That's a bad example.
Totally, no, I've totally used that example before, and it's not great, but it is a form of leadership. And
it'll show what leadership is capable of doing for good, or in this case, the bad. But when you have those people on your side and you're doing good things, it's different, right?
Right. And then and then on the flip side of that is, everybody's been put into a challenging role at some point in their time where they're conflicted with either do they support their supervisor, they support their parent, what's going on. And so that's also leadership, when you have the courage to stand up and say, no, this isn't right. That's also leadership that's there. You have to use your superpowers for good and not evil.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say that I specifically know firefighter problems. My organization I have for veterans, and we've extended it to first responders too. And we help veterans with PTSD. We have different programs and whatnot. We extend that to, like I said, to firefighters, policemen, first responders, even EMTs, because of the the rates in firemen, I can understand it, or it seems more on the cuff for veterans and police, but you don't understand the PTSD that firemen go through when they are got little dead babies that they're trying to save, terrible car wrecks that they come upon, and there is a lot of PTSD that I was unaware of in the fire department. We worked. That was one of the things of leadership that I saw as failing. It was one of the biggest things here in our city. I was trying to help our fire department with was getting the leadership to acknowledge some of those problems and let these guys have the help that they need without any stigma attached to it, um, without making them think that they're weak or less of a men because they've seen terrible, tragic things and they probably need to get it off their chest instead of self-medicating or doing other unhealthy behaviors because of that. And it was a real problem here in my city that I think they finally started addressing. But that was a big one, and that takes leadership. Can you talk about any of those things that you know about, or how, if you have addressed them at any
Oh man,
programs?
we I guess we'll be talking for about another 2 or 3 hours because that was one of my huge focuses before I left wildland firefighting, and it is I put firefighters, and you can put almost any of a high risk, police, fire, military. You could put them all in four different categories. Or there's four different stages in your life. So the first stage, when you start your career, you want to go to every fire. You want to be there. You want to make as much overtime as possible. You want to be involved in every single thing. You're living, breathing, eating everything. Second part is then you start to either have a relationship or a family, and you're trying to balance that, and you still want to go to all the fires, but you're trying to balance your family life. And then the third, and this third can happen to anyone. There's a fatality. There's almost a burnover. There is, you come across a multi fatal accident. There's something that just totally rocks your world and upsets everything, and you got to navigate through that and get back to your quote unquote self. And then the last is you've done this for an entire career. Now you retire, you got nothing. So your identity was yourself as firefighter, military, or whatever else. Now you get out, you don't know what your identity is. And so all four of those you have to navigate. But we did a huge mental health push in Nevada and in the wildland fire world of just normalizing mental health. And in the it's called the DSM, Diagnostical Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. That's where mental health professionals use that to diagnose PTSD, ADHD, alcoholism, blah, whatever's in there. And it is like an inch and a half thick book. Everybody's in there. Everybody in the U.S. is in there somewhere. And whether that is a little ADD, whether that is some alcoholism, whether that is some drug use, whether that's narcissism, whether it's borderline personality disorder, everybody is in there.
Everybody's got something, huh?
Everybody's got something. And so being able to, one, just recognize nobody's perfect, and then just being able to talk about it. The example that we'd give with our hotshot crews, the 20-person crews that are highly trained to go into some of the hardest areas on fires, and they are like really tight. They're tight with each other. They're pretty hardcore. And I'd ask them, I'd say, who can do the most pull-ups? Oh, Jim over there, he can do 25 pull-ups. He's the most. Said, who can run the fastest? Oh, George over there, he can run a 5:20 mile, and he runs ultras in the wintertime. They said, okay, well, you've got these. I said, how come everybody else can't do 25 pull-ups? Well, our bodies are different, or something. Just like your mind. Everybody's mind is different. And your growing up, your adolescence, your young adulthood all shapes the way that your mind, your biases work. And I say that, from 8 to 18 really shapes a lot of your future and your biases. And whether that is, you had, good parents, or you had shit parents, or you were abused, or there was sexual abuse, or there was child abuse. All of that really affects you going forward into adulthood. And recognizing where your biases are and recognizing your challenges, and being able to talk to peers and professionals about that, that's leadership right there. The when you have a crew of three that's in a fire engine, and somebody's dog is dying, or somebody's grandma's dying, or you're having a fight with your wife or something, you know just knowing where that person's mental space is and the challenges helps that crew perform better, as opposed to just locking it up, push it down. We call it the pressure cooker. So you can push that down for a long time, but that pressure cooker is going to blow, and it's going to blow, and it's going to be violent and unwanted and messy on other people that are out there. So the biggest part that we did with the mental health is just normalizing it. How do you support your peers? And when it gets past what you can support, how do you get professional help?
It's a lot, especially if you're in an organization that has no concept of that, and basically has blown it off, even with a presentation of, hey, this is what this is what's happening, this is how we can help. Yeah, kind of shrug their shoulders. Hopefully it's helping, but it has been falling on deaf ears, which is just kind of tragic to me that anybody would treat their subordinates like that. They're loyal
Totally.
people that are serving, risking their lives, and when they do, and they have some tragic situation, they've been kind of brutal to them. It was something I fought against pretty good, but I don't think that's everywhere. Maybe there's places that take good care of them. We just had a bad round of leadership here at the position as the chief, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Toxic leadership can ruin an organization so fast. It's ridiculous.
Totally. And there's a lot of companies and that have EAP programs, and EAP programs work great for about 90% of the employees that are out there. And what we found was individuals that are in a high risk, high stress situation. Most of the EAP therapists or professionals that are out there, they don't have the training to work in trauma in a high stress environment. And so, when you're telling stories that either that led to PTSD, or stories from military, or stories of car wrecks, and the therapist starts crying, hey, who's helping who here? And so being able to find those trauma informed therapists that whether it's EMDR, whether it's microdosing of psychedelics, there is so many different tools that are out there to help, and that's one thing to help. I think the biggest thing is that self-awareness of that you need the help, and you're willing to look for the help in order to improve yourself. Because that, I think you said just a little bit ago, sure, you can dive into a bottle. That is about a 10-second solution, and it's not a long-term solution. I don't think anything positive has ever come out of drinking 2 to 3 bottles of wine every single night to drown your problems.
Maybe a baby.
Maybe a baby, yeah. Maybe a baby. Yeah, even a headache's not good out of it.
Yeah. I will tell you that with some of the veterans that I have, part of the problem is they'd be willing to talk to a therapist, but they don't want to talk to a therapist that has no concept of the life that they've lived, cannot relate. We have veterans that have left the military that have become therapists that we use for our calls. If we get them, we send them. One of my board members he's actually still in, but he's a veteran also. He relates better, and I find that that's helpful. I know you might not find a policeman that is as become a counselor or a therapist or a fireman. That I assure you that if we could work on that somehow, people that have been in these fields somehow, if we could get them to have these kind of degrees, make that somebody that has walked in the boots and then they have the degree and can offer these services. I promise you that I found great resources in that when it is a veteran actually talking to a veteran, and one of them is a licensed counselor. It
Yep.
makes all the difference in the world with what they're willing to say to them and talk to them about and open up to. Because if you have just Sally that's gone through school and got her degree and she's just sitting there that has had hardly anything in life, gone through high school and college, and then has her job as a therapist with little diversity and anything in life, a lot of those therapists are shocked to their core from what they might hear. Like, oh my God, I can't believe that that's real. I can't believe that you went through that. It's shocking to them, where it just seems like regular stuff to the military guy, you know?
Totally. About 9 years ago, we had a fatality in northern Nevada, double fatality, and we were trying to get mental health professionals, and we didn't have any contacts, so we went through our EAP program, and this guy shows up, hops out of the car. He's got penny loafers on, and he's dragging an oxygen tank. Now, you would take that guy to talk to a bunch of firefighters. How do you think that credibility went? And getting back to your point where you don't know, you have to have people that are culturally competent, and firefighters, yeah, and firefighters, wildland firefighters, people that are on hot shot crew or engine crews, they'll go on fires every 2 weeks, throughout the entire summer. So they'll go on fires, they'll come home for 2, 3, 4 days, they'll go back out for another 2 weeks, and come back for 2, 3, 4 days. So you have that challenge of, one, you got to leave your family. You got to go be totally immersed 16 hours a day, 18 hours a day fighting fire. Then you got to come back and reintegrate. And so you've got this ramp up and ramp down, similar to the military, where you've got this mission mindset, and then all of a sudden you come home and, well, the dishes aren't done or the lawn's not mowed, and you forget that somebody's running stuff at home all the time. It's not up to you to run it. And so it's that dichotomy of that mission mindset, as well as getting back to your family environment of what's important, and and how do you make those connections. Then we see that you go all the way through the fire season. Hotshot crews, they'll work 6 months, they'll make 1,000, 1,200 hours overtime, so they're working together for like 2,000 hours in the 6 month period. And so you are tight, and you're working with each other, and then all of a sudden in the wintertime, you don't. You go home. And so it might be really, really dark, and firefighters are more dangerous to themselves in the off season than the job is. And so how do you maintain connections? How do you support each other peer wise? And stay in that good mental health space to be back the next fire season. It's a wild world. It's getting better.
It is wild, and that world is largely something that the populace at large is unaware of. They don't. It's the things that they don't. It doesn't even contemplate them. It doesn't cross their mind that, man, firemen, a large part of their job is doing medical stuff or on emergencies.
Yeah,
and they see terrible stuff, drowning kids, kids burned alive, car wrecks. Mama might be dead and baby's alive in the back seat. Stuff that messes with you.
Totally, yeah.
And makes it hard to lay your head down at the end of the day. And we know that they get a lot of credit and they're a little revered. When we're little, people will think about, what do you want to be grow up? I know the popular answers were police and firemen when I was little. I don't know if that's whatever, but that's what kids play, firemen and police. They're not usually playing a bunch of other jobs. Maybe get a stethoscope, play a doctor or something like that. But police and firemen and army, those are little boy things anyways, that they're definitely always into it. It would seem like.
Totally.
So
Yeah.
there's a reverence there for that
And we
position,
see
but
that
it's overlooked for the difficulties of it.
totally. Yeah. And we see the same thing with the pilots, and whether it's a helicopter pilot, air tanker pilot, they'll work. It depends on the company and the contract and the schedule, but most will work, 6 days on and have 1 day off. Sometimes they'll work 10 days on and have 2 days off. And so when you have a family and you're trying to balance that, if your family's in Arizona, but you've been fighting fire in Montana, it's pretty hard to get home for 2 days off. So
Yeah.
some companies work 12 days on, 12 days off. Most are, a 10 days on, 2 days off, or a 6 and 1. And so, it's the same deal that we're seeing in pilots as it is with firefighters, as with,
Wow.
military, is you're gone all summer long. And then you've got to reintegrate back with your family throughout the middle of the summer, through at the end of the season. And then let's hope is a terrible tactic and strategy, that there's not an aircraft crash or a fatality accident, that them, and then you've got to figure that part out too. So it's there's a lot of similarities in the wildland fire world, to include the pilots, mechanics that are out there as well too.
Walk me through a day. One of these guys, if they'd be working out there in California right now, walk me through a day.
So most pilots they're up, they're at the airport doing their pre-flights anywhere between 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning or so. So they're usually ready to go. Depends on whatever start time they're going to have. They're there an hour before doing their pre-flight, ready to go. So they they show up at the helibase. They show up at the airport, Fox Field or something. They're working. Pilots are working with the mechanics. Mechanics are checking over the airplane. Then they'll usually have a briefing. Nothing really happens without a briefing. So they're what aircraft are assigned, what aircraft are available. Here's the weather forecast. Here's what's going on with the existing incidents. You're going to be assigned here. You're going to be assigned here. Air tactical might be over the fire at 10 o'clock and order 4 helicopters. So it depends on what the situation is. And so they, at 10 o'clock, you might have 3 Blackhawks and a couple air tankers that are heading out to the fire, and they saddle up. Their time over target is 10 o'clock. So they get there and start working with the ground crews. Usually so around the fire is what's called the fire traffic area. And within 5 miles, they're talking to the air attack. Air attack is flying a plane in right-hand pattern. So you have a pilot and then an air tactical group supervisor. So it's kind of like close air support in military. So they're flying right-hand circles, so the guy on the right can see what's going on the ground, working with the crews on the ground, talking to the incident commander what the plan is. That air attack is then relaying to either the helicopters or the air tankers where the plan of attack is, and say, okay, here on the right flank, we're going to start working around that. You're supporting Orange County #1, you're supporting Engine 215, you're supporting Eldorado Hotshots, whatever is out there. And so they'll make those contacts, come in, do the drops, whether retardant or water. And then if the fire's continuing to go, they keep doing that until they got to go back for fuel. And then they bring in more aircraft that to support those guys. And that continues until air attack or the incident commander says, yeah, we're good for the day. They're stop forward progress of the fire, and you might be on scene for an hour, or you might fly for 8 hours straight. Or you might show up after the briefing and weather is clear. We'll just see what happens. So you might sit a whole day without doing anything. But the thing with fire is, if we knew when and where the fires are going to be, we'd be damn good at our jobs.
Wow.
That's the challenge.
Well, what kind of accommodations is it? Is it just hotel accommodations? Do they build a camp? What do they do?
So, like when they're in California, so most of the aircraft that fly out of airports, so that would be like the large air tankers, the single engine air tankers, the twin engine commanders. some of the large helicopters, Black Hawk, Chinooks, Sky Cranes. Most of those will be you'll have a hotel room because you're going to be in a city. There's areas where you might not have hotels, or they might have to fly. Everybody gets in one helicopter and flies to a hotel. But like some of the areas, like in the middle of Idaho or in the middle of Oregon, Montana, there's nothing close. And so, some of those pilots, they might be camping out on the ground, and they might bring their own trailer, or they're camping out on the ground for 2 weeks. And that they try to limit that, try to make sure that the pilots and mechanics can get some good quality sleep instead of, you got a rock in your back. But there's worked with quite a few pilots that they're ready to go and stay wherever the crews and the ship are.
Well, how are things looking out there right now? What? I promise you that I've been passive with the news on it, and that's probably terrible. It's not directly affecting me. I know it's affecting so many Americans and right now, but I've kept, it's going whatever. I don't even know what the current state of it is.
Right now, most of those fires, they're looking pretty good. They've had a couple. There was one down north of San Diego the other day, but there's a lot of resources that's down there to respond to those. And so whenever they get a new start, they're launching a bunch of stuff. I bet you each fire is going to have at least 10 aircraft that's responding to that, between air tankers and helicopters. They do have still high winds forecasted. You're still high pressure set up over a Great Basin, so they are getting some of those still Santa Ana winds. And I know they got rain just the other day. This last weekend or so, got a couple of days of rain. So fire season turns into mudslide season. But even though you get a little bit of rain, people get lulled into this sense of, there's going to be no more fires. Well, you forgot about the 4 or 5, 6 months that you didn't have any moisture, and 2 days of rain isn't going to fix that in the long term. So, right now the fires are looking good, and that's probably some of the highest fire danger right now in the U.S. is just where we're in Southern California. So crews are standing by, ready to pounce whenever there's a new start.
Well, you fill us in pretty good on that. I will have to say, just as the casual observer, I have to say that these guys that fly these planes, helicopters, whatnot, they're psychotic adrenaline junkies. I've watched some of the videos. They look like they're having too much fun working, being a little daredevil. I mean, all of it seems daredevilish in those planes when they're flying so low and dropping stuff. Something's got to be wrong with these pilots, right? Come on now.
Yeah,
they're all crazy adrenaline junkies. Something.
They've got a great passion for the job. They love what they're doing. It's fun. It's a totally different job in aviation. When you're flying 60 feet in a helicopter off the ground, dropping water on a fire, seems a little chaotic, but it's fun. When you're flying an air tanker, DC-10 air tanker, 200 feet off the ground, dropping retardant, it's pretty fun. And it's challenging, and it's rewarding. But I think there's a lot of them that say that they're crazy. There might be a little bit
let's just be honest. I think I nailed it. They're psychopath adrenaline junkies, and there's nothing wrong with that. You have to
like what they're doing.
You do that if you're not.
Yeah, they like what they're doing. There's quite a few people that fly air tankers that they used to fly for the airlines, and they didn't like going from Phoenix to Kansas City and just in a normal flight. And so the dynamic environment, you have to have the training, the skills in order to respond to that. And some people respond really well to that, and some people don't. And so we want the people that respond well to that.
And I might be one of those guys. I like that kind of stuff. I'm a psychopath when it comes to adrenaline stuff too. Most of the time, there's a few things that I won't do, but some of the fun I ever had were when we were in Afghanistan. Lots and lots, and everywhere you went was almost by helicopter.
Yeah.
And we had rules that the helicopter wasn't so much fun, but when we rode with the British, They were giving us a ride. They were flying low, contouring the earth. We had to go high and slow in ours. They were all over the place, and it was absolutely just crazy adrenaline. They're like, let's show these American guys, and they did. And I was like, yeah, you're not scaring me. You're looking at me like you want to join the British Army and jump in the helicopters. This is amazing. I was having the best time, and they
That's
made it.
awesome.
It made it all the fun in the world. Like no other. Believe me, I've had my fair share helicopter rides. Literally, to go across the street in Afghanistan, I'd have to wait for a helicopter to land on my base, take me up, and then drop me off across the street. It
Yeah.
was crazy, but
Well, and I
it
think
was fun.
that was the biggest thing. When I was fighting fire, is the unpredictability. You never know what's going to happen throughout the day. You might be on a fire, you might be on your way to Idaho, you might be going home at night. The unpredictable nature of it, is really what drives a lot of the people, and that's what I found the thrill in it is. You never know what's going to end up at the end of the day.
Always an adventure, huh?
Yeah, always an adventure. Yep.
Yeah, I dig that. I mean, not that I'm a fireman or ever thought about that, but if that was something I ever got into, I can see where it could be enjoyable. A lot of hard work, rewarding at the end, probably, or rewarding sometimes. Uh, Devastating at sometimes, no doubt. But like you said, just the fact that it's not ever the same thing. Every fire is probably different. Even though you're probably saying, "Oh, it's another fire, structure fire." They're all unpredictable, and you never know what's going to happen. So it's you always got to be up on it, don't you?
Totally, yeah. And that's part of the experience, and that's part of your training is being able to recognize all the different things that are going on with fire, taking into account what fuels it's burning in, what's the weather doing, what's the topography, where's it going, and that's just the skills of fighting fire. I don't even know how many fires I was on, hundreds, maybe thousand. I don't know, and it's you use all of that experience in order to once you show up, here's what we're going to do.
Well, I will tell you that generally, anytime I talk, this is even regular life, not just on a podcast. Anytime I strike up a conversation with anybody that's done service like this, or the police, or military, or anything like that, I always try to coax out of them, tell me your wildest and craziest story from this job. And I've heard some that were like, holy moly, man, what a kid. And
Probably
just
my closest.
gory, bad, sad, whatever. Just the one that you feel
Yeah,
comfortable with, that you could be, this one was crazy, whatever.
I think it was. I won't get into the gory ones; those aren't fun. But I think the one that kind of changed my perspective and kind of checked my ego a little bit is it was similar to not these LA fires, but most of the large fires that occur and they do a lot of damage happen outside of the traditional fire season. And this one was November 4th, 1995, and it was a cold front that was coming through, burning sagebrush, and it was just ripping. And I picked up a fire engine, went and picked up one of my buddies, another one, and we went out to this fire. And we going along the flank of the fire, driving along this road, and we found another fire engine. They go, okay, just go right down here. The head is right down here. You should be able to go just down this road on this ridge and be able to catch it. And so drive down there and looking to see where we could start engaging the fire. We saw quite a bit of unburned fuel between us and the fire, which we call that a watch out situation. And so all of a sudden I hear the fire engine behind me goes, hey, you got fire behind you. I look in my rear view mirror and a big wall of flames passing behind me. And then all of a sudden fire went in front of the fire engine. And I looked, and the guy who was out on the front hose dropped the hose, and he ran around, and he was down by the front tire, and fire tripped and fell, and fire was licking over his legs. And he got up on the running board of the engine. His eyes were like about as big around as dinner plates. And I go, okay, we'll just sit right here. And then I looked over to the right, and just this wall of flame was coming for the engine. It hit the engine, ran right through us, and we backed out of there, and nobody got injured. But from that point on, it was like, oh well, these guys behind me said, yeah, it's safe to go down there. I go, yeah, that wasn't great. One, we put 3 people at risk. 2, we did absolutely nothing to suppress the fire, and 3 is like, what the hell were we going to do down there anyway?
Oh.
And so from that point on, it really kind of instead of getting into that mission mindset, have kind of the bigger picture of what's going on, what your efforts that you're doing on the fire is going to, how's that going to impact the bigger part of it. And, just to add even more insult to injury, about 2.5, 3 hours later, there's 2 inches of snow on the entire fire. So it didn't matter what we did. We just put a bunch of people at risk, for it's going to snow anyway. And so that's it. That was one where it really, I learned a lot about myself, about, how do you listen to others and following others, and, making sure you have a plan, not just listening to everybody else's plan.
I'm sure that you have been put in hairy and wild situations throughout your career, no doubt, with what you're doing. A lot of risk involved in that, especially when you're like, hey, let's fight fires with planes. Let's fly through the air. Let's fly low. Let's fly through the smoke. So it's very interesting. I appreciate you coming here today and sharing your story, filling us in a little bit. It's something I've really had no knowledge on, and I really found it very interesting, everything you've been talking about. But we appreciate your time today. We hope that those fires out in California get under control, and we appreciate folks like you that do what you do. People know that you exist, but they probably not as much as the guy in the red uniform on the fire truck, on the ladder truck. But your job is just as significant and just as important. Probably look how bad it is out there, and it's more than just a structure fire and a fireman. They're trying to save large swaths of what has just been total devastation. So we appreciate you. I thank you for coming on today. If there's anything else that you'd like to close us out with before we say about the LA fires, I'd appreciate that. And then I just want to thank you for your time.
You bet. I'll probably leave you with 2 things, for the listeners that are out there is, as people are moving through their career, you don't know what you're doing today that might impact your future. And, the job that you have today might be the one that you're going to have in 10 years. It might not be the one you're going to have in 10 years. And because where I ended up and where I started and where I ended up now, it's not even, I didn't even envision that. So, have an open mind of where you're going. And I think the biggest thing is never pass up an opportunity to lead. Everybody's looking for leaders and people that are out there, whether public, whether your local school board, whether your job. Don't pass up an opportunity to lead.
And I think that's a great way to end it. And we'll stop right there. And once again, I appreciate you for your time and effort, and all the folks just like you that are out there risking their lives to help save others and save their property. We appreciate you.
You bet. Thanks, Kelly.